Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back to the ANEW Insight Podcast. We are back for the second half of this interview with plant-based facilitator Guy Borgford. Guy gave us some invaluable insight into his inspiration to explore and practice plant-based medicinal healing. We cannot wait to learn more. Thanks for coming back, Guy.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yay. So we spoke a lot, I think, just scratched the surface in terms of how meditation and how exploration with plant-based medicine can help to open and alter your consciousness and help you to tap into the highest part of yourself and the greater consciousness of the universe, essentially. Give us a picture of what you experienced. How has exploring in this realm changed you fundamentally?
Yeah, so starting back when I was a kid, and there was a few times where I had these really big experiences, primarily with mushrooms, and I still remember some of them. But let's fast forward to a few years ago, prior or just after I started meditating, and my first ayahuasca experience. I had already had this Kundalini awakening, but I still hadn't kind of integrated because I didn't know really what was going on. Mm-hmm. So I was still carrying on with my usual shenanigans. And, I mentioned, and I think in our last discussion, I lived a pretty fast-paced life. Mm-hmm. I was hanging out with a younger crowd because I was dating someone quite a bit younger than me. And it was really the order of the day was just partying. And I binge drank, we'd go on vacation and we would just party our faces off. I was using cocaine quite regularly, smoking cigarettes, just on a fast track to an early death, quite honestly. And after my first ayahuasca experience, Mother Ayahuasca is what, we call her in the circles. And she said, no more cocaine and no more cigarettes. You're done. And I never touched it again. And just like that, I'm done. And then through that, I started really kind of digging with the mushroom. And my intention in working with mushrooms was quite often what's next. I was like, I'd throw it out to the mushroom. And when we set intentions, that's kind of what we're kind of looking for to get from the medicine, whether it's guidance or healing or, releasing blockages, whatever it may be. I quite often use this what's next because that in itself is kind of an act of surrender and surrender is what we want to do with some medicine. We always want to just surrender and release control and allow the medicine to show us what we need to learn. Mm-hmm. So this intention of what's next, I was sitting with the mushroom. And in our last discussion, you referenced the physical healing that can happen through these medicines. Mm-hmm. So this is what I'm sharing right now. I had the intention of what's next. And okay, I always start crying when I tell this story.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. Hang on. So my father was killed when I was 12 years old in a helicopter accident. And I was away at hockey school on the mainland. I lived on Vancouver Island, and I was away at hockey school, and I got the message over the phone, and I was by myself. And they rushed me off to the airport. I got on a plane by myself and I flew back to the island. And two of my sister's boyfriends picked me up and they handed me a bottle of whiskey. And they're like, drink some of this. It'll make you feel better. So 40 years later, I take some mushrooms and I say, "What's next, mushrooms?" And the mushroom said, "Remember this? You never felt this. You never really felt this loss."
Wow.
It was intense. It was intense. And it came out like a dam breaking open, like just, and
Oh,
just the wailing and the sobbing and that just, man, it was the saddest thing. And so beautiful. So beautiful. So I had this little asthma condition. And it was getting to the point where I'd go hiking in any kind of little hills or anything. I'd have to stop all the time. And granted, I smoked a lot of cannabis back then and everything. But 2 weeks later or so after this experience, I realized my asthma was gone.
wow.
It was just gone. And I'd like walking up hills, no problem, no short of breath, just like no inhalers. And they say that our breath is connected to our emotional world. And
Mhm.
and this asthma was a blockage, because the asthma came up right after my dad's death. Like, I didn't realize it, but when I looked back, I went, "Oh yeah, I remember that's when it came up."
Wow.
I never really expressed that grief. And that's one of the things these medicines are so good at, is expressing
Yes.
grief and allowing stuff to flow. We are that's how we are engineered.
Yes.
Beautiful human suits is like, get it out. You look at
Mhm.
animals, right? When they experience some kind of stress, how they
They shake.
they shake it out. So that was the shakeout. And yeah, I've had lots of those since, and they continue to happen. As I sit with medicines right now, I've been really focused on working with ayahuasca, and the other ones are not so important. But through ayahuasca, I stopped smoking cannabis back in September, and I was a regular user and have been my entire life. But cannabis for me was just an excuse. It was just an excuse to not do what I needed to do. I
Mhm.
live up here in the mountains in beautiful nature, and there's nothing, I mean, in my opinion, nothing better than, have a couple puffs of cannabis and get out in nature, and everything's just so beautiful and lovely. But I used it as an excuse to not do what I needed to do to align with my purpose and why I'm here in this human experience. And
Mhm.
so Mother Ayahuasca again says, "Hey, cannabis, not to say you got to quit it forever, but you got to lay off it. As long as you're working with me, no more." And
Wow.
so, yeah, I haven't touched cannabis since September, which is for me is a big deal.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Can you explain to our listeners who might not have had any experience in this or really don't know and kind of have had that like dark view of these types of medicines, how they help you? Like, what is the scientific underpinnings of something like ayahuasca? Why is it helpful in terms of facilitating healing, especially mental health healing?
yeah. I think that's a really loaded, complex question. I think it
Yes.
varies for everyone, but some of the kind of core tenets of the container of these medicines include uh, feeling safe. And that's why having a container where you feel safe to be vulnerable, to let go, to relinquish control, and to allow yourself to access these higher realms of understanding. So I think that's one. From a physical perspective, the science is out with entheogens and psychedelics that they create neurogenesis. So, and new neural pathways. They
Wow.
create new neural connections. I always say these medicines are like a hardware upgrade, where, from a computer perspective, my background in consulting comes in here. You know, we get a shiny new computer. Yeah, you're going to run Windows 95 on that? No, you're going to get the latest operating system. Windows 95 was bad, by the way.
So bad. That's
Yeah,
why I'm
yeah,
laughing.
yeah, yeah. But you're gonna get new software. And so the software upgrade is the integration work. Is, we get all these new neural pathways, new connectors. We get these insights and these epiphanies about, oh, I need to do this. Oh, this is why I function that way. This is why I have this conflicts in these types of situations. You get all this understanding. The integration is the software upgrade. It's where you actually got to now start operating from that new understanding. And it takes work. That's why everybody says it in this space. It's not a magic pill. It takes work.
Mhm.
But this opens the door. The medicine opens the door and shows you how you can change. You still
Mhm.
got to do the changing. And so
Mhm.
anybody who thinks it's just like, oh, I'm going to sit with mushrooms and all my problems will go away. Yeah, I wish it was that easy, but it can lead to profound healing and profound expansion and understanding.
I think from what I'm gathering, it helps you actually face a lot of things that you may have tried to dissociate from or suppress.
Yes.
I think that that's our culture. I think that we are, buck up camper, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, boys don't cry. We have all sorts of messaging that tells us that we need to suppress our emotions or put them away somewhere or not face them. And in that suppression, that's where we see a lot of mental health difficulties, but also physical health tends to correlate with the suppression of these traumatic incidences. There's a really amazing author called Carolyn, I think you say Mays, it's spelled Myss. She's a medical intuitive. She's like someone that doctors like, and she's completely validated, somebody doctors call upon, and they'll describe the patient. She doesn't even have to have the patient in front of her, and she knows what's wrong with them based off of the description. And
Wow.
she's written a couple books, and she's really amazing. But that's what kind of opened my eyes to the physical presentation of illness, why it might start to form in somebody and not in somebody else. Somebody can be a smoker forever and not develop lung cancer, while others do, and what could be the emotional causes for these disease states as well. And you
Yeah,
can see the correlation, like you said, with you developed asthma right after, your father sadly passed. And that was trapped energy in your body that was never released. You
that's right.
suppressed with alcohol, you kind of tapped out, zoned out, and it stayed in the body. And once you actually faced it, it dissipated, which I just
Yep.
think is like, I just think it's magical. I think it's
Yeah,
amazing. And I think that, if more people were open just to facing what they've gone through, they would be able to release that trapped energy in their body. So tell us, for the people that are, completely gun shy about any kinds of like, psychoactive medication like this, are there ways that they can achieve, say, what you achieved without going into that kind of state?
absolutely. Plant medicine, they're just tools to access these higher states of consciousness. There's a million different ways to get there.
Mhm,
We already talked about meditation. That is
mhm.
my number one
Me too.
go-to recommendation. A mindfulness, conscious awareness, to be present, to be really practice presence and in a day to day. Tune in. What is my body? Why am I getting all upset? What does my body feel like? Gee, I'm feeling anxious. What does that feel like? My chest is tight. My breathing. Pulling out of our head and into our body and listening to our body and understanding what our body is telling us in the present moment.
Mhm.
Things like sensory deprivation. We live in an overstimulated world. To kind of start tuning some of that